And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
Hello, my name is David DeBosk, and today, again, I'm coming to you from Texas. Let me say that if this is the first time that you've tuned in to watch one of my videos, let me thank you. And I also want to say thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my channel and those of you who are keeping up with my videos. To start with, let me say that over the years, I've learned to pay attention to that small, still voice within. Sometimes I sense something inside of me that's telling me to stop and to consider something undetected or overlooked. I believe that the ability to see and understand spiritual things is the gift that's called discernment. Discernment will tug at your heart. It will raise questions, it will protect you, and it will lead you to a better understanding of the truth. In the days immediately following the death of Queen Elizabeth, I found myself asking questions about the person and the power of her son Charles. Anyone keeping up with the news knows that Charles is an avowed environmentalist and an advocate for a new world order. However, like most in the world, I really haven't paid all that much attention to his association with organizations such as the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the G7, and the charitable organizations that he's affiliated with, as well as world leaders. My heart told me there was more, a whole lot more to this story, and thus my video that I posted recently entitled, Who is King Charles? A few days after posting that video, a dear brother of mine from Australia, he emailed me with additional information and the link to a couple of videos. And since that time, I've spent hours researching the life and the political involvement of King Charles III. What I discovered leaves no doubt. He is the Antichrist prophesied throughout Scripture. The video you are about to watch is a compilation of evidence that will shock many. Charles is working tirelessly around the clock to assume his decreed position as the leader of the New World Order. Please watch this video. Watch it in its entirety. Weigh the evidence for yourself. And then share it with everyone that you know as soon as possible. Because time really is running out. In the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, we read, Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man. His number is 666. The number 666 is the most infamous number in all of history. It is the number that signifies the embodiment of all evil and lawlessness. It is the number of the man who deceives the world and brings about darkness, despair, and judgment. How appropriate that in the 6th chapter of Genesis we are told of God's judgment of the wicked by bringing forth the floodwaters upon the earth. Scripture states, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. In verses 12 and 13 we are told, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. We are quickly approaching the end of the 6th day, the 6,000th year since creation. The beginning of the 7th day, the day of Yahweh, the millennial reign of the Messiah, will mark the beginning of the Great Tribulation, the pouring out of God's wrath, and the earth's destruction, this time by fire. Paul tells us that the man of sin, the son of perdition, will be revealed just prior to the beginning of the 7th day, the day of the Lord. And John, he tells us how to identify him. In ancient Hebrew, and later in Greek as well, each character of the alphabet had a corresponding number. To calculate the number of a man, using this method, one would sum up all the letters in the name, which are represented by numbers. The practice of performing the calculation using the original language of Hebrew is referred to as gematria. Curious, I began to pull a number of study Bibles from the shelf in order to examine both the translation of Revelation 13:18 and review the commentary set forth in the notes. I was surprised to discover that a number of Bibles either reference or suggest the use of gematria as the method for calculating and solving the number of the beast. Of all the translations I reviewed, the Orthodox Jewish Bible translated by Dr. Philip Goebel stood out from all the rest. This translation is an English translation that applies Yiddish and Hasidic cultural expressions to the Messianic Bible. For the record, Dr. Goebel is considered a leading scholar in his area of theological expertise, and his Bible translation work is known in Israel and around the world. He spent 31 years poring over every word in the Hebrew Bible. Each key word was then translated so that the Orthodox Jewish meaning would shine through. With regard to Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, the Orthodox Jewish Bible states specifically, let him do gematria and get the mispar, the number. Take a close look at this chart, and you will notice that in both the Greek majority text and the Textus Receptus that the number 666 is expressed in gematria, with chi being 600, Hi being 60, and stigma 6. 666. 6, 6, 6. A few years back, a gentleman by the name of Monty Judah, who is a Messianic pastor from Oklahoma, along with friends that were employed with Martin Marietta, developed a computer program designed to calculate the numeric value of names using the Hebrew method of gematria. They inserted names of powerful men, political and religious leaders from around the world, and only one name emerged with a name with the numeric value of 666. 666. The name? Charles, Prince of Wales. Take a close look at this chart. The vertical column to the very right is the Hebrew spelling of Charles, Prince of Wales. Next to the spelling is the corresponding numeric value for each letter, with the sum total being 666. Out of curiosity, they decided to apply the English numeric value to each letter in the spelling of Charles, Prince of Wales. And get this, the sum again totaled 666. The odds of any religious or political world leader's name calculating to the equivalent numerical value of 666 in one language is phenomenal. But in two languages, that would be thought to be an impossibility. But get this, King Charles III was born on November the 14th of 1948, exactly 6 months to the day when Israel was declared a nation on May the 14th of 1948. Throughout the ages, governments, religions, fraternities, and secret societies have employed codes, rituals, and symbols, overtly and covertly, as a means of identification and mission. Symbols are not necessarily hidden. Sometimes they appear in plain sight, but they go undetected by those outside of the organization. On January the 22nd of 2020, Prince Charles gave the keynote address before the meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Behind him was a lighted wall displaying an artistic and lighted rendering of the 3 feathers that are found in his royal coat of arms. Each feather was depicted by 6 strands of colored lights. Symbolically, the 3 feathers served as a cloak while portraying the number 666. Biblically speaking, the number 6 is the number of man, for he was created on the 6th day. It represents all the imperfection of man, no matter how great. And it represents his falling short of the number 7, which is representative of completion, fulfillment, and the perfection of Yahweh. The significance of a name is found in its ability to confer affluence and reputation. Thus, a person's name signifies their person, their worth, their character, their reputation, and their authority. I find it interesting that Queen Elizabeth named her son Charles. Various sources indicate that that was inspired by names meaning strong, strength, and warrior. Simply stating, the name Charles means the strong man. In Mark chapter 3, verse 27, Yeshua metaphorically indicates the strong man is Satan, and that it takes one stronger to bind him in order to cast out demons. Throughout the ages, many have employed many numeric methods in their attempt to identify the Antichrist. However, the calculation of the numeric value of his name is only one part of the puzzle. One must realize that the prophets, especially Daniel and the Apostle John, were given visions that were characterized with great images and symbols as further identification. In other words, the visions and the imagery of the Antichrist will serve to confirm the calculation of the number. For instance, in Revelation chapter 12, John states in his vision that another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon. The great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. A little history here. As an emblem, the red dragon of Wales has been used since the reign of Cadwaladr, king of Gwynedd, from around 655 AD. Some historians have theorized that the Welsh dragon symbol developed from the Draco standards borne by the Roman cavalry. These symbols were brought to Britain during the Roman occupation. By 828 AD, the dragon was no longer just a military symbol, but associated with a coming deliverer from the Saxons. And for the first time, it was a symbol of independence. On March the 11th of 1953, the motto, Ud Drago Draed Cap Win, the red dragon gives impetus, or the red dragon leads the way, was added to the royal badge of Wales. It became the basis for the flag of Wales. The current version of the flag was adopted in 1959. This is exactly what the Apostle John saw in his revelation of another sign, an omen, a portent, which appeared in heaven, a great, fiery, red dragon. At his investiture as the Prince of Wales, Charles and the Queen faced the Queen's Gate at Carnarvon Castle with royal banners draped from the towers, bearing the image of the red dragon. Her Majesty passed the sword to her son, making him Earl of Chester. After this came the coronet, his crown, the symbol of sovereignty, the gold ring, the symbol of unity between the prince and the nation of Wales, the gold rod, symbol of temporal rule, and finally, the kingly mantle. After a short religious service, the Queen led her son to Queen Eleanor's Gate, where Prince Charles received the homage of his people. Keep in mind that the flag is representative of one's country. Thus, Charles symbolically became Prince of the Red Dragon. I have never been to London, so I was surprised in my research to learn that there are statues of dragons all over the place. They sit on metal and stone slabs that mark the boundaries of the city of London. And get this, a pair of dragons has supported the crest of the city of London in its coat of arms since the early 17th century. And in the latter part of the 19th century, ornamental boundary markers, as I just mentioned, were erected at points of entry into the city, each surmounted by a dragon clutching its heraldic shield. People, this is a story that just keeps on giving. When Prince Charles served in the military, he wore a red patch on his flight jacket with the emblem and the name of his call sign, Red Dragon. Now let's look at the royal coat of arms. The origin of the term coat of arms is in the cloth tunic that was worn over the armor to shield it from the sun's rays. It repeated the bearer's arms on both his banner and on his shield. The royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom is the arms of dominion of the British monarch. These arms are used by the king in his official capacity as monarch of the United Kingdom. The royal arms appear in courtrooms and law courts that comprise part of the ancient royal court, since the monarch is deemed to be the fount of judicial authority throughout the United Kingdom. A close examination of King Charles III's royal coat of arms provides a portrayal that authenticates the terrifying visions that were witnessed and recorded by both the prophet Daniel and the Apostle John. Notice that at the very top is the lion wearing the royal crown depicting Charles as both king and the supreme ruler of the United Kingdom. To the right is the unicorn, a beast with one horn. In the book of Daniel, we read that he saw this horn with eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth that boasted with audacious and arrogant claims. Notice the eye of the unicorn is that of a human eye. The unicorn represents Scotland. It stands on the sinister, the left side. According to ancient legends, a free unicorn was a dangerous beast. This is why the heraldic unicorn is chained. Notice the chain around his neck. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7, the Apostle Paul wrote, "For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way." Right below the unicorn, we find the image of the fiery red dragon, which was visualized and identified by the Apostle John in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation as Satan himself. In the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, John states that he saw a beast that was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. To the one presenting arms, the lion would stand on the dexter, the right-hand side. Daniel writes in chapter 7, verse 4, "The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. Then I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And the mind of man was given to it." The motto Ich dien appears at the very bottom. In German, it means I serve. In Welsh, it means behold the man. In the bottom left corner, you will see the depiction of the 3 feathers. It is said that the Black Prince took the feathers from the body of King John of Bohemia, against whom he fought at the Battle of Circe in 1346. He adopted the king's motto, Ich dien, as his own. The prince bore a shield depicting the 3 feathers, described as the shield of peace. In the center section, embedded in blue, you will see the image of the golden harp of Ireland. The harp goes back to King David, and it is considered the heraldic symbol of Ireland. It is said that Joseph of Arimathea was the great uncle of Yeshua, Jesus, and by profession a copper merchant that visited the Isles. Legend states that after the death of Yeshua, he became a missionary and was eventually sent to England to preach the gospel. The monarchy believes that their bloodline can be traced all the way back to King David. We read in Revelation chapter 17, verse 12, that the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. It is interesting to note that in the center shield there are 10 lines. I presume those represent 10 kingdoms. It should be noted that Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of thy people Israel. That might seem strange until you realize that the English monarchy is one of the oldest in the world. Its roots can be traced back to the time when William the Conqueror was declared King of England in 1066, and it can be traced even further still when the Romans invaded Britain in 43 AD. However, it is believed that the royal family's roots can be traced back to the royal family of Israel, and that King Charles is actually a descendant of King David. On June the 28th of 2018, there was an article that appeared in the South African Jewish Report. The headline stated that British royals have Jewish ancestors. It went on to say that England believes it is of the house of Israel, the tribe of Ephraim, the firstborn of God. Its bloodline stretches back before the coronation of King David to the Egyptian royal house, thus making it the oldest living dynasty in the world. Britain's Jewish roots are still in place. The Israeli embassy in London is on Crown land. It was Britain who created the new Jewish state. Like Joshua, it was an Ephraimite who led the Hebrew tribes in conquering Canaan. The queen's sons and male heirs are circumcised by a Moel. And then there's a rabbi that dutifully visits the family every Erev or evening of Shabbat. Then on September the 11th of 2022, there is an article that was written by Dr. Yvette Miller that states that King Charles III has something in common with thousands of British Jews. He was circumcised by Rabbi Jacob Snowman, a brilliant physician and one of London's leading Moelim. Folks, Charles is highly regarded among the Jewish people. He was even given the privilege to deliver an address at the World Holocaust Forum, which was held at Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center that is located in Jerusalem. The story of King Charles III becomes even more diverse. In an article that appeared in UPI on October the 10th of 1986, it states that it is little known by the British people that the blood of Muhammad flows in the veins of the Queen. It goes on to state that, however, all Muslim religious leaders are proud of this fact. Brooks Baker said the British royal family is descended from Muhammad through the Arab kings of Seville who once ruled Spain. By marriage, their blood passed to the European kings of Portugal and Castile, and through them to England's 15th century King Edward IV. What may be one of the biggest surprises to those of you who are watching this video is that King Charles III has converted to Islam. In an article that appeared in September of 1997 in the Middle East Forum, it states that this claim was put forward by no less than a personage than the Grand Mufti of Cyprus. It states, "Did you know that Prince Charles has converted to Islam?" Yes. He is a Muslim. I can't say more, but it happened in Turkey. Oh, yes, he converted all right. When you get home, check on how often he travels to Turkey. You will find that your future king is a Muslim, Prince Charles of Arabia. Folks, most people that I know have no idea that King Charles III is the most admired and popular Westerner among the Muslim nations. To understand this business of a new world order, we need to go back in history for a moment. The Paris Peace Conference was the formal meeting in 1919 and 1920 of the victorious Allies after the end of World War I to set the peace terms for the defeated Central Powers. The conference involved diplomats from 32 countries and nationalities. One of its major decisions was the creation of the League of Nations, which was founded on January the 10th of 1920. It began with 4 permanent members: the United Kingdom, France, Italy, and Japan. A meeting was convened on May the 30th of 1919 by a gentleman by the name of Lionel Curtis, consisting of American and British delegates to the Paris Peace Conference. This gave birth to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, also known as Chatham House, which is located, by the way, in London. Ultimately, British and American delegates formed separate institutes, with the Americans developing the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. For various reasons, the League of Nations ceased operations. Subsequently, this led to the establishment of the United Nations, which officially came into existence on October the 24th of 1945. The first meeting of the General Assembly, with 51 nations represented and the Security Council, took place in London, beginning in January of 1946. The General Assembly selected New York City as the site for the United Nations headquarters. Construction began on September the 14th of 1948, and the facility was completed on October the 9th of 1952. At the very center of UN policy is this organization that is called the Royal Institute of International Affairs, better known today as the Chatham House. It is a parapolitics organization which directs London's foreign policy. It presents itself as an independent policy institution, but it is in fact a British foreign intelligence arm. According to notable historian Edward Griffin and Professor Carol Quigley, a Brookings researcher, Defense Department consultant, and Bill Clinton mentor, Chatham House is a product of the secret society that is called the Round Table. The Round Table was established by Cecil John Rhodes and Lord Alfred Milner in 1891. Rhodes called for the formation of a secret society to oversee re-establishment of a British Empire that would incorporate most of the developing world and, get this, recapture the United States. No doubt there are many that would consider Rhodes a visionary. He's actually quoted as saying, "Why should we not form a secret society, but with one object, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole world under British rule, for the recovery of the United States, for making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire." What a dream! But yet it's probable. It is possible. According to Tim Cohen, the author of a book that is entitled Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, Prince Charles for decades has headed the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London. And according to Cohen, the United Nations owes its very existence to the Royal Institute of International Affairs. I would like to think that people, especially in the United States, are familiar with the term the Great Reset. However, I know many who refuse to watch any form of news, be it local, national, or even world news. Curious, I decided to ask a few people if they've ever heard the term the Great Reset or the 2030 Agenda. One lady I was talking to, I'm guessing that she was in her 20s, she told me that she had heard the term the Great Reset, but she had no idea what it was. Another guy told me that most of his friends would not have a clue. Well, just in case you don't know, let me give you a definition that comes right off of the United Nations website. Simply stated, the 2030 Agenda is the transforming of our world. According to the UN, the 2030 Agenda is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. They state that it seeks to strengthen universal peace and larger freedom. And they state that they recognize that eradicating poverty in all of its forms and dimensions, including extreme poverty, is the greatest global challenge and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. All countries and all stakeholders acting in collaborative partnership will implement this plan. Then they state, "We are resolved to free the human race from the tyranny of poverty and want to heal and secure our planet. We are determined to take the bold and transformative steps which are urgently needed to shift the world onto a sustainable and resilient path. I imagine most people would be surprised to learn that it is King Charles who is at the helm of environmental activism around the world. In the past, Charles has used his influence to advocate for climate action overtly. In 1992, the landmark UN Earth Summit was held in Rio de Janeiro. It was the first time in 20 years that UN member nations had convened to discuss environmental issues. A year before that summit, Charles hosted an informal reception off the coast of Brazil for delegates on the Royal Yacht Britannia. The guests included the Brazilian president and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency administrator. It was reported that Charles challenged officials and business leaders over the role of their respective countries at the impending Rio summit. He later called for the same people to show vision and courage at the summit. Just before the Rio summit that took place in June of 1992, an article appeared in UPI, the United Press International, that stated, Prince Charles, heir to the British throne, Wednesday urged industrial countries to adopt a far-sighted agenda at this summer's environmental summit in Rio de Janeiro. The son of Queen Elizabeth II told a meeting of the World Commission on Environment and Development that future generations would be in danger unless action was taken to safeguard the Earth's environment. Now, moving forward, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, known as COP21, was held in 2015. It was attended by the greatest number of world leaders in history. More than 150 heads of state and government were present. And take a guess who opened the conference and gave the first speech. Yes, it was Charles, then the Prince of Wales. Now listen carefully. Here are a few selected clips from his speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, rarely in human history, as the Executive Secretary has just said, have so many people around the world placed their trust in so few. Your deliberations over the next 2 weeks will decide the fate not only of those alive today, but also of generations yet unborn. To avoid catastrophe, we must restrict climate change to less than 2 degrees, which requires a dramatic reduction in carbon emissions. Only 1.7% of global annual consumption would be required to put us on the right low-carbon path for 2030. We lack only the will and the framework to use them wisely, consistently, and at the required global scale. Governments collectively spend more than $1 trillion every year on subsidies to energy, agriculture, and fisheries. Just imagine what could be done if those vast sums supported sustainable energy, farming and fishing, rather than fossil fuels, deforestation, and overexploitation of the seas. It is the premium we need to pay for our collective long-term insurance policy. We have also seen how fast innovation and investment can drive low-carbon energy technologies, and we are learning how to develop circular economies in which everything we previously regarded as waste becomes the feedstock for future growth. So I pray that in pursuing national interest, you will not lose sight of the international necessity. Back in 2009, just before COP15 in Copenhagen, I remember trying to point out that the best scientific projections gave us less than 100 months to alter our behavior before we risk the tipping point of catastrophic climate change, beyond which there is no recovery. Have we really reached such a collective inertia that ignores so clear a warning? 80 of those 100 months have now passed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we must act now. You are all here to set us on the road to a saner future. If, at last, the moment has arrived to take those long-awaited steps towards rescuing our planet and our fellow man from impending catastrophe, then let us pursue that vital goal in a spirit of enlightened and humane collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you well in your endeavors, and I shall pray for your success.
In another article posted by the UN on September the 26th of 2019, it states that the UN chief sets out roadmap to raise ambition and to fund sustainable development. The article quotes Prince Charles saying, "The transition to a sustainable future is essential for the ultimate vitality of life as we know it." Prince Charles went on to say that he could only pray that leaders will embrace the utmost urgency of what is required, and that they will commit themselves and inspire others to practical action in order to finance the sustainable development goals and climate action. Vast numbers of young people around the world, he continued, are fed up in the face of unprecedented global emergency. Then, on June the 2nd of 2020, the World Economic Forum convened in Davos, Switzerland. Guess who delivered the keynote address? Yes, it was Prince Charles. And not only did he deliver the keynote address, he also launched his Sustainable Markets Initiative, a global plan of economic and industrial reforms designed to transform our planet and the lives of everyone on it. Here are a few clips from that keynote address.
Your Royal Highness, your years of dedication, passion and work are highly relevant to the theme of this year's annual meeting, Stakeholders for a More Cohesive and a More Sustainable World. We are grateful for your leadership on stakeholder responsibility in accelerating the transition to a sustainable market. And we are very honored to work with you on such a flagship initiative. Today, we are all keen to hear from His Royal Highness his vision for a more cohesive and sustainable world. Please welcome His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales.
Therefore, to move forward, we need nothing short of a paradigm shift, one that inspires action at revolutionary levels and pace. And with this in mind, I am delighted to be launching a Sustainable Markets Initiative with the generous support of the World Economic Forum. For me, sustainable markets offer a new systems-level framework which grounds markets in a higher purpose mission. In other words, putting people and planet at the heart of global value creation. Changing our current trajectory will require bold and imaginative action, together with determination and decisive leadership. We all know the problem. and increasingly we agree on the direction. 2020 is the time for solutions and practical action. If there is one critical lesson we have to learn from this crisis, it is that nature, ladies and gentlemen, is not a separate asset class. Nature is, in fact, the lifeblood of our financial markets, and as such, we must rapidly realign our own economy to mimic nature's economy and work in harmony with it. After nearly 50 years of trying to champion this cause, I cannot help feeling that finally we are ready to change our trajectory. For my part, I have made sustainable markets my priority for 2020 and actually beyond, however long it takes. I've instructed my teams and my organizations similarly to align with this effort, and I expect them to contribute. So, beginning here at Davos and throughout the year, and in order to identify game changers, investments and barriers to transition, I will be convening a broad range of industry and issue roundtables, including, but not limited to, aviation, water, carbon capture and storage, shipping, forestry, plastics, financing, digital technology, the bioeconomy, nature-based solutions, renewable energy, battery storage, electric vehicles, fisheries, integrated healthcare, cement, steel, traceability and labeling, and agriculture. These roundtables will bring together system innovators, investors, and decision makers to start designing and charting the course. I believe profoundly in the critical importance at this juncture of forming an unprecedented global alliance of investors which can genuinely mobilize the kind of trillions of dollars needed to put our economy on the correct path. It is my greatest possible hope that you will join me this year in accelerating the transition to sustainable markets and rapid decarbonization. And the time to act is now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Between October the 31st and November the 12th of 2021, the UN Climate Change Conference, known as COP26, was held in Glasgow, Scotland. In attendance were 120 world leaders and over 40,000 registered participants, including 22,274 party delegates, 14,124 observers, and 3,886 media representatives. On Monday, November the 1st, Charles, then Prince of Wales, spoke in front of world leaders at the opening ceremony of the Climate Change Summit. Listen to this small clip.
As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at his disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders, it offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Did you know that Charles has been declared the Savior of the world? In March of 2002, Charles made a trip to Brazil. Somewhat surprised, he was presented with a small bronze statue, a smaller version of one that has been placed in the center of a small Amazon village. According to an article that appeared in The Age, Prince Charles has agreed to allow a 4-meter-high bronze statue to be erected in the middle of Brazil's Amazon rainforest, depicting him as Savior of the world in a loincloth with arms outstretched and suspended by giant wings. The statue is a tribute from the people of Tocantins State, the remote Amazon region. It was the region's affinity with Prince Charles' eco-friendly campaign that inspired local sculptor Mauricio Benitez. The statue showed him hovering over a sea of humanity, casting a benign look downwards and his arms in open embrace. "It is Prince Charles saving the world," said Tocantins' governor, who sprang the gift on Prince Charles as he toured a research station in the middle of the rainforest swamp. And listen to the prince's response. He said, "I'm amazed and deeply touched." The inscription on the statue in Brazil is the words, "Savior of the world." On June the 1st of 2012, John Walsh, writing for The Independent, stated that he, Charles, has also been designated Savior of the world in the Brazilian rainforest. In the city of Tocantins, a life-size statue commissioned in 2002 shows him in bronze as a muscular, winged god, clad only in a loincloth. At his feet, a mass of bodies apparently trapped in mud represent the world he is saving through his enlightened approach to the environment. For the record, ancient statues of the Greek god Zeus, also known as Jupiter according to the Romans, depicted him naked and draped with a loincloth. In 168 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, the Seleucid king, occupied Jerusalem. He set up a statue of Zeus in the temple, and he sacrificed a pig on the bronze altar to Zeus, thus defiling it. He then banned the Jewish religion and actively persecuted those who refused to comply. Epiphanes means illustrious one, or God manifest, indicating that he claimed to be the earthly manifestation of Zeus. Folks, intentionally or unintentionally, that bronze statue that was presented to Charles, then Prince of Wales in Brazil, depicts him as Zeus. Just prior to this year's United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, that was held in Egypt, King Charles hosted a pre-conference reception at Buckingham Palace for leaders from around the world. According to an article that appeared in Sky News, the reception had been organized to facilitate discussion of sustainable growth, progress made since COP26 in Glasgow, and collective and continued efforts to tackle climate change. The following is a small video clip. Listen carefully to Stella McCartney, the daughter of Paul McCartney, as she speaks to King Charles regarding saving the world.
Everyone seems to be adjusting to his new role. Fashion designer Stella McCartney, who shares his passion for the environment, just one of hundreds invited to the palace.
Yeah, beautiful day to save the planet.
The king seemed less keen to be overheard, a sign of how controversial it's been that he's not going to COP27, despite years of warning about the need to act. Instead, he left his prime minister to speak.
If we do not act today, We will risk leaving an ever more desperate inheritance for our children tomorrow.
It's a shame not to have had King Charles there to represent this whole approach to what we stand for. It's good that Rishi Sunak, as our Prime Minister, at long last, got his head screwed on tight enough to understand the significance of being there in Sharm el-Sheikh. But let's be honest, he doesn't really understand the issues. He certainly doesn't understand the climate diplomacy associated with it.
In the book of Daniel, we read about a prince who will make or impose a firm covenant with many. Some translations say with the mighty for 1 week. For half a week, 42 months, he will ban sacrifices and the grain offerings, and on the wing of detestable abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who causes horror. My dear friends, listen. The covenant with the mighty or with the many may well be the Great Reset. Folks, it was Prince Charles who challenged world leaders to come together at the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris, stating the time to act is now, to take those long-awaited steps towards saving our planet. The result? The Paris Agreement. Here is what the UN had to say about this agreement. Quote, to tackle climate change and its negative impacts, world leaders at the UN Climate Change Conference, COP21, in Paris reached a breakthrough on the 12th day of December of 2015, the historic Paris Agreement. The agreement sets long-term goals to guide all nations. The agreement is a legally binding international treaty. It entered into force on the 4th day of November of 2016. Today, 194 parties, 193 states plus the European Union have joined the Paris Agreement. Quite frankly, King Charles has rallied the world's leaders to come together with an overriding goal: save the planet. And in the process, they've all entered into covenant to completely transform our world. Over the last few years, my Bible study has focused on the underlying Hebrew and Greek manuscripts. In doing so, I've been able to learn a little of the Hebrew language. A few months back, I was doing a little research and the word British flashed across my mind. In fact, it was one of those waking moments that caused me to stop everything I was working on. I asked myself, why had I not seen this before? Quite frankly, I knew that the word Brit in Hebrew means covenant, and that the word Ish means man. It was like I had been blind and now I see. The word Brit Ish means the covenant man. On September the 8th, at the moment that Queen Elizabeth died, the throne passed immediately and without ceremony to the heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales. Charles III is now King of the United Kingdom and 14 other Commonwealth realms. He is officially the head of the British Commonwealth, which is comprised of a total of 56 member nations representing a combined population of 2.4 billion citizens. That is approximately 1/3 of the population of our planet. As the British monarch, Charles III will also assume responsibility as the defender of the faith and the supreme governor of the Church of England. He will help lead his country's most prominent faith group with its 26 million members. In an article written by Robert Jobson for the Daily Mail and published back in October of 2018, he states that Charles, on the other hand, has taken a great interest in other religions. studying both the Quran and Judaism in depth. He is an individual who wants to chart new territory, and that will be very interesting indeed, says Lord Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury. He is very outspoken. Then Jobson goes on to state that the prince certainly caused a furor when he told Jonathan Dimbley that he wants to be seen as a defender of faith when he ascends to the throne rather than the defender of the faith. Then Jobson states, "It has been made clear to me that Charles will absolutely 100% be named defender of the faith when he is crowned king, but he will also demonstrate in his reign that he believes wholeheartedly in the importance of his connecting with all faiths of the subjects that he will reign over." King Charles III's coronation is scheduled to take place on Saturday, the 6th day of May of 2023. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said the coronation ceremony will take place at Westminster Abbey, London, and will be conducted by the Archbishop of Canterbury. According to The Guardian, Charles will be anointed with holy oil, receive the orb, coronation ring, and the scepter, then be crowned with the majestic St. Edward's crown and blessed during the ceremony. King Charles III, by his own admission, is a proponent of a global systems solution, also known as the Great Reset, which is comprised of environmental and economic reforms, production of alternative and genetically modified foods, and depopulation. In a recent interview, Tim Cohen stated, "He is behind everything happening in the world today, and you probably have never heard that." Without a doubt, King Charles III is the most powerful man on earth. And according to Scripture, he fits the bill. He is the Antichrist.